It's July 4th weekend in 2018. My friend Kyle and I are on a backpacking trip to Caribou Lake in the beautiful Trinity Alps wilderness in Northern California. My dog Zebediah, Zeb for short, is with us. Zeb hates the 4th of July, so every time around this time of the year, I try to get him as far away from fireworks and Oakland, where we live, as possible. We set up camp at the trailhead and are pleased to see that we have the place to ourselves. After dinner, we explore a few trails around the campsite. We scamper over boulders along a swiftly moving creek, swollen by recent rains. Zeb is loving it. He's always been most at ease in the woods. It's a typically beautiful Northern California scene. We're surrounded by pine trees, the weather is perfect, and there are no fireworks to be heard. There's a point along the trail where it's possible to jump to a boulder on the other side of the creek. Kyle and I easily make it across, but Zeb hesitates. He loves water, but he's a terrible swimmer, and he's intimidated by how quickly the water is moving. He paces along the creek bed, trying to find an easier place to cross. A few times he musters the courage to run up to the edge, but then slams on the brakes. I know if he jumps, I can grab his harness and pull him to the other side, but I need him to jump. I call to him, and he looks down at the water, and he looks up at me, and I can see the question in his eyes. Are you sure? I found Zeb when I was a graduate student living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Well, I should say, we found him, my wife Heidi and I. After months of begging her to get a dog, she finally agreed to go with me to the shelter just to look. Yeah, you know how that goes. A staff member at the Humane League led us to the back room where the dogs were kept in kennels. There was lots of barking. Some of the dogs were lunging themselves against the chain link gates. And then we saw him, this puppy with Rottweiler markings and a Shar-Pei snout and a head that looked too big for his body. He was shaking like a leaf, obviously overwhelmed by the environment. Heidi knelt down outside of his gate and locked eyes with him. And that was it. He was our dog. 2 years later, when Heidi asked for a separation and then a divorce, there was never any question about who would get Zeb. He was my dog. Plus, Heidi was more of a cat person. In the early days of the divorce, I sometimes found myself sitting in my backyard, tears streaming down my cheeks, grieving the biggest loss of my life. And on those evenings, Zeb would come over, and he would sit close to me, and he'd put his paw on my knee and look up at me with those big brown eyes. And I knew he was telling me that he was there for me. Zeb had a lot of great qualities as a dog. He was goofy and playful and very loving. But he had two major flaws. He ran away every chance he got, and he was never great at obeying commands. Once on a camping trip in New Mexico, he launched himself out of the back window of our moving car to try to chase down a squirrel. On a hike outside of Austin, he'd spotted a deer and bushwhacked his way off the trail in hot pursuit. On a backpacking trip soon after we moved to California, he tried to round up a park ranger, which resulted in a $75 fine for not being under voice command. I loved him dearly, but I was never quite sure if I could trust him or if he trusted me. Back at the creek in the Trinity Alps, Zeb and I lock eyes, and I say to him, "Come on, bud, I got you. I'll help you to the other side." he runs off in the other direction. And for a second, I think he's running away again. But then he stops, and he charges toward me, and at just the right moment, leaps into the air. And I grab him by the harness and pull him to the other side. He's obviously proud of himself and scampers off to do more exploring. Zeb was 8 years old on that backpacking trip, and it was the first time I noticed him slowing down. Over the years, as Zeb aged, his once bright eyes dimmed. He lost strength in his back legs, and his muzzle grayed, but he never lost his love for the outdoors and was always up for a hike or a camping trip. In August of this year, Zeb's vet discovered a growth at the base of his tongue. And because of his age and the position, it couldn't be removed. And his vet told me that the growth would likely continue to get bigger and would probably cause other complications, and that I should enjoy the time I have with him. Over the next few weeks, every chance I got, I took Zeb to County Park in Lancaster. And despite the arthritis in his legs, he turned into a puppy whenever we hit the trail. And he would find the first path down to the creek and happily play around in the water. As Zeb's vet predicted, the growth continued to get bigger, and it started making it difficult for him to eat. And then he stopped eating. And a month after his 14th birthday, I took him back to the vet to see if there was anything they could do. There wasn't. And I knew I had to make a decision that I never wanted to make. Sorry, I thought I was ready to tell the story. In a private room in the vet's office, I held Zeb in my arms, and I looked him in the eyes for the last time. And I thanked him for always being there for me, and I told him how grateful I was for the time we had together, and how much I loved him, and then I let him go to the other side. If all dogs go to heaven, I hope Zeb is up there, surrounded by pine trees, and that he's got a creek that he can play in, and of course, that there are no fireworks. Thank you.